Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep on something that, feels like it's straight out of science fiction, but it's actually becoming more and more relevant to all of our lives, artificial intelligence ethics.
Hmm.
We're going to be checking out artificial intelligence ethics, a comprehensive overview, and whether you're, prepping for some big meeting or just curious about how AI is changing, like everything, this deep dive is for you. So get ready to think about some big questions like, can AI be biased? What happens when AI has to make serious decisions? And will robots actually take over the world?
It really is fascinating how fast AI has gone from just, theoretical discussions in like universities and stuff to actually, being used every day and impacting our lives.
Yeah, it's really mind-boggling. Just a few years ago, we were talking about AI as like this future thing, and now it's like everywhere
Hmm.
in our phones, healthcare, finance, like you name it. So let's talk about the core issue here. Why should we even care about AI ethics aside from the whole robots taking over the world thing, which honestly is a bit terrifying to even think about.
Well, the robots taking over might be a discussion for another time.
Yeah.
But the reason AI ethics is so urgent right now is that it's already having real-world effects.
Yeah.
It's not theoretical anymore.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just some philosophical debate anymore. Imagine an AI that's used for hiring, but it's accidentally programmed with bias.
Right.
That could be a disaster. Or even more, I don't know, unsettling. Like an AI in a self-driving car has to make a split-second choice, and it causes an accident. It's like all of a sudden it's very real and very human.
Absolutely. If we ignore ethics when we're developing AI, it could have really bad consequences like discrimination, accidents, even huge privacy breaches. The stakes are really high.
Okay, yeah, you've convinced me we need to pay attention to this. So let's break down what actually makes AI ethical. Our source talks about some key principles, starting with fairness and mitigating bias, which that seems super important in a world where algorithms are making more and more decisions, right?
Yeah, it's totally fundamental. AI systems learn from the data we feed them, right?
Hmm.
But that data can often reflect biases that already exist in society, which leads to biased results. Even data that seems neutral on the surface can have these hidden biases that just perpetuate discrimination.
That's kind of unsettling. I hadn't really thought about how easily data could be skewed, even if it seems neutral. Can you give an example of how that bias might actually show up in real life?
Sure. Imagine an AI system that's trained on, let's say, historical hiring data. Its job is to pick out promising candidates. But if that data reflects a bias towards men in certain jobs, maybe because of societal norms or past discrimination, the AI might learn to unfairly favor male candidates for those positions, even if they're not the most qualified.
Wow, that's a really sobering example. It really shows why addressing bias in AI is so crucial. So, how do we even start to tackle this issue of fairness? Where do we begin?
It's a multifaceted problem, for sure. First, we have to acknowledge that data is rarely truly neutral. We have to really scrutinize the data used to train AI for potential biases. And that often means going beyond just looking for obvious markers like gender or race and digging into more subtle indicators that could reveal unconscious biases.
So, it sounds like we need to be really proactive about identifying and mitigating these biases if we want to create ethical AI.
Exactly. It takes a conscious effort to find and correct those biases to make sure things are fair.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move on to another principle that the source mentions, transparency and explainability. This one really hits home for me. I think it's really important that we don't treat AI like it's some kind of magic black box?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like, imagine a judge just gave a verdict without explaining their reasoning at all. It would be like super unsettling, right?
Mhm.
If AI is going to be ethical, we need to be able to understand how it makes its decisions, especially when those decisions are really important, like in healthcare or finance.
So it's not enough for AI to just spit out an answer. We need to understand the why behind it. And this seems especially crucial when AI is making decisions that could really impact people's lives in a big way.
Exactly. Think about an AI system that's used to diagnose diseases. If it flags a patient as high risk for something serious, we absolutely need to know what led the AI to that conclusion. It helps us trust the system more, and it lets human experts double-check the AI's reasoning and make sure it's accurate.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It feels like transparency and explainability are also super important for accountability too, right? If an AI messes up, how do we figure out who's responsible?
And that leads us right into the next principle, accountability and responsibility. AI is becoming more and more a part of our lives, so we need clear rules about who's to blame when things go wrong.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Is it the programmer who wrote the code, or the company that's using it, or even the user who's relying on the AI's output? It's like uncharted territory here.
You're right. It's a super complicated issue with no easy answers. But it's a conversation we need to have now before we end up in situations where no one's clearly responsible, and that leads to like really bad outcomes.
I totally agree. We need to be setting guidelines and making rules now while this technology is still developing. Okay, so we've talked about fairness, transparency, and accountability. What's next on our list of ethical AI principles?
Well, all this amazing AI tech relies on data, and a lot of that data comes from us, the users. So another crucial principle is privacy and data protection.
Right, all this AI magic depends on huge amounts of data. But how do we balance the good stuff that AI can do with the need to protect our privacy?
It's a constant balancing act, and it needs a lot of careful thought. Think about all the data you create every day. Your searches online, what you buy, where you go, your social media, even your health records. AI thrives on this stuff, but ethical AI has to prioritize data security and user privacy.
It feels like a bit of a trade-off, you know? We want the convenience and the benefits of AI, but not if it means giving up our privacy.
That's exactly the dilemma. How do we use this incredibly valuable resource to improve lives without sacrificing individual rights?
Okay, so we're talking about being careful about what data we're feeding these AI systems and making sure it's being used responsibly. What else should we be thinking about?
Another key piece is what's called human-centered AI and autonomy. Basically, it means making sure that AI is designed to serve humanity, not the other way around.
I like that human-centered AI. It's like a reminder that we're still in control, right?
Exactly. It's about remembering that AI should be a tool to empower us, not to control us.
Can you give me an example of how this principle might play out in the real world?
Sure. Take AI in surgery, for instance. AI-powered robots can help surgeons with incredible precision, but it's crucial that the surgeon is still in charge, making the final calls about the patient's care. We don't want AI making life or death decisions on its own in the operating room.
Right. It's about finding that balance between AI's capabilities and making sure humans are still overseeing things. So we've talked about these like fundamental ethical principles, but how do they actually work in the real world? I'm a little, I don't know, nervous to get into this part, to be honest.
Yeah, it is kind of like stepping into uncharted territory. Our source points out some pretty big ethical dilemmas that are already coming up as AI becomes more and more a part of our lives.
Okay, so let's unpack these dilemmas. The first one that really jumps out at me is AI and surveillance and the possibility of like invasion of privacy. It feels like we're walking a tightrope between security and personal freedom, you know?
It's a really tricky balance. On the one hand, AI-powered surveillance can be like super powerful for improving security and preventing crime. Imagine a world where AI can analyze live footage to spot potential threats, track suspicious activity, even predict crimes before they happen. A pretty tempting idea.
It does sound kind of like compelling from a security standpoint, I guess. But it's also kind of creepy to think about AI constantly watching everything we do. What about the potential for misuse? Like what if it gets into the wrong hands?
That's the heart of the dilemma. The same technology that could help prevent crime could also be used to, like, silence people who disagree with the government, track people without their consent, and make people afraid to speak their minds. The potential for abuse is a really serious concern.
And the source specifically mentions facial recognition tech, which I know has been like a really controversial topic. It seems like that's where a lot of the worries about surveillance are focused.
Yeah, facial recognition is a perfect example of how AI surveillance brings up these, like, really complex ethical questions.
Yeah.
Imagine a world where AI can identify you in a crowd, track where you go all over the city, even analyze your facial expression to figure out how you're feeling. It's impressive, but also incredibly invasive.
It feels like we're heading into a world where everything we do is recorded and analyzed.
Mhm.
What does that mean for our privacy and like our freedom to just be ourselves?
Those are the exact questions we need to be asking.
Right.
How do we make sure these technologies are used responsibly and ethically? How do we protect our privacy when AI is, like, everywhere? These are challenges that we need to think about really carefully and find solutions for.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to think about. And honestly, it's making me a little uneasy. But let's move on to another ethical dilemma the source talks about, one that I think is even more unsettling. The idea of AI being used for weapons.
This is where things get really scary. We're talking about lethal autonomous weapons, machines that can decide who lives and dies on the battlefield without any human involvement. It brings up fundamental questions about what war even is and whether it's ethical to let algorithms make those kinds of decisions.
Ugh, the phrase lethal autonomous weapons just like sends chills down my spine. It sounds like something from a dystopian sci-fi movie.
I know, right? But it's not sci-fi. It's something we're dealing with right now. This technology is being developed as we speak, and the ethical implications are huge. Imagine a battlefield where machines are choosing who to kill without any human compassion or oversight.
That's a chilling thought. Who would be held responsible if an autonomous weapon, like, malfunctions or makes a mistake? Could we even program a machine to understand the nuances of war and make ethical choices in the middle of a battle?
Those are the questions people are arguing about right now. Can we trust machines with the power to kill? And if we do, how do we make sure they're used ethically and responsibly? These are questions that everyone needs to think about seriously, not just scientists and engineers.
It feels like we're standing at the edge of a whole new era of warfare, one that's driven by algorithms and AI. It's exciting and terrifying at the same time.
It's a pivotal moment, and the decisions we make now will have consequences for a long time. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that hits a little closer to home for a lot of people. The possibility that AI could replace jobs and make economic inequality even worse.
Yeah, this is something I know a lot of people are worried about. It seems like every day there's a new article about robots taking our jobs. Is it really as bad as some people say?
It's definitely a valid concern
Yeah.
and one we need to address head on. As AI and automation get more advanced, there's no question that some jobs will be lost. But it's not necessarily all doom and gloom.
So you're saying it's not just a simple case of robots taking over every job?
Right. While some jobs will definitely be automated, AI can also create new opportunities and make us more productive in ways we can't even imagine yet. The key is to adapt and change along with these technological advancements.
So instead of freaking out about losing our jobs, we should be focusing on how to prepare for a future where AI is a big part of the workforce.
Exactly. We need to invest in education and training programs so people have the skills they need to thrive in an economy where AI is important. We also need to rethink our social safety nets and economic policies so that everyone benefits from these advances, not just a few people.
So it's not just about adapting to the technology itself, it's about adapting as a society. We need to be ready for a future where work might look really different from what we're used to.
Absolutely. We're on the verge of a huge shift in how our society works, and we need to handle this change thoughtfully and ethically.
Okay, so we've talked about surveillance, AI weapons, and job displacement. What other ethical issues are we facing in this, like, brave new world of AI?
One that's becoming more and more common, and especially tricky, is the rise of misinformation and all these deepfakes.
Deepfakes. I feel like I'm hearing about them everywhere. They seem like a real threat to, like, truth and trust, especially online.
They are a serious threat, no doubt. Deepfakes are basically AI-generated videos or audio that make it seem like someone is saying or doing something they never actually did. And they're getting so good that it's harder and harder to tell what's real and what's fake online.
It's scary to think about how this technology could be used to spread lies, manipulate people, even create chaos and conflict. I've seen some deepfakes that were really convincing, and it's unsettling, to say the least.
It's incredibly unsettling. Imagine a world where you can't even trust what you see and hear, where videos and recordings can be easily faked to spread propaganda and lies. It undermines the whole idea of truth and trust that our society is built on.
It feels like a recipe for disaster. How do we even begin to fight back against misinformation when technology makes it so easy to create and share fake stuff?
That's the challenge we're facing right now, and it's a tough one. It's going to take a multi-pronged approach. We need better tools to spot deepfakes and other AI-generated misinformation. We need to teach people about this threat and help them become more critical consumers of information. And we need to hold social media platforms and other online spaces accountable for allowing false content to spread.
It sounds like a huge task, but it's super important. We can't let fear and misinformation destroy our trust in each other and in the systems that hold our society together.
I agree, the stakes are high. But the good news is that there are people out there working hard to solve these problems. In fact, our source highlights some initiatives that are already underway.
Okay, tell me about those. I need a little dose of optimism after all this doom and gloom.
One big development is the European Union's AI Act. It's a landmark piece of legislation that aims to regulate AI systems, make sure they're developed and used ethically, and protect people's fundamental rights.
That sounds promising. So we're starting to see governments step up and realize that we need rules for this stuff.
Yeah, the EU is leading the way here, but other countries are also starting to think about regulations for AI. The IE, a big professional organization for engineers, has also put together some guidelines for ethically aligned design.
What are those guidelines about?
They provide a framework for thinking about ethical issues throughout the whole process of developing AI, from gathering data and designing algorithms to actually using and monitoring AI systems. They emphasize transparency, accountability, and human well-being as key factors.
So it's not just about reacting to ethical problems after they happen. It's about building ethics into AI from the very beginning.
Exactly. There's also something called the Aslamar AI Principles, which are guidelines created by a group of leading AI researchers, ethicists, and policymakers.
What do the Asilomar principles focus on?
They highlight key areas of concern, like safety, transparency, and making sure AI benefits society. Their goal is to ensure that AI research and development is done responsibly and ethically, with a focus on helping people and minimizing potential harm.
It's good to hear that so many people are working hard to make sure AI is used for good.
It is encouraging. These initiatives show that more and more people are recognizing that we need to be proactive and thoughtful about how we approach AI. The future of AI isn't set in stone. It's up to us to shape it in a way that benefits humanity.
Well, I'm feeling a bit more optimistic now. It's good to know that we're not just sitting back and letting the future of AI happen to us. We have a role to play in making it what we want it to be.
Absolutely. And that's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll look at what the future of AI ethics might hold and what steps we can take to make sure AI stays a force for good in the world.
I'm excited to get into that. Stay tuned, listeners. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, exploring the core principles of AI ethics and all those complex dilemmas that they bring up in real life. Now I think it's time to shift gears a bit and look ahead. What does the future of AI ethics look like?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? The future of AI is, well, it's still being written. But one thing's for sure, it's going to have a huge impact on, well, pretty much every part of our lives.
Hmm.
Our source mentions a few key areas where AI ethics will be, I think, especially important in the years to come.
Okay, let's hear them. What are some of those big ethical challenges we might be facing as AI, keeps evolving?
One area that's really, really interesting and maybe a little worrying is the growing role of AI in government and decision making. We're already seeing AI being used to help make policy decisions, decide how to allocate resources, even assess criminal justice cases.
Wow, AI helping to run our cities, our countries, maybe even the whole world. That's a pretty big step.
It is a major shift and one that raises a ton of ethical questions. How do we make sure that these AI systems are fair and unbiased and accountable to the people they're supposed to be serving? How do we stop them from being used to concentrate power or make existing inequalities worse? These are questions we really need to be thinking about now before AI becomes so ingrained in our systems that it's hard to change course.
Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility to put on a machine, even a really, really smart one. How do we even start designing AI systems that can make fair and ethical decisions in those kinds of situations?
It's a massive task, and there aren't any easy answers. But I think there are a few key things to keep in mind. First, we need to make sure that these AI systems are designed with human values at their core. That means making fairness, justice, transparency, and accountability top priorities when we're developing and using them.
So it's not just about making AI that's smart. It's about making AI that's in line with our ethical principles.
Exactly. And second, we got to make sure that these AI systems are subject to really strong oversight and accountability. We can't just blindly trust machines to make the right decisions. We need ways to monitor their performance, to spot potential biases, and to step in when we need to.
It sounds like we're talking about a whole new field of AI governance, where we're not just, building AI, but also like coming up with the rules and structures to govern it responsibly.
Exactly. We need to think about AI governance as a fundamental part of AI development, not something we tack on at the end.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's AI in government. What other big ethical challenges are out there on the horizon?
Another area that's both super exciting and potentially pretty scary is the development of artificial general intelligence, or AGI.
Ah, yes, AGI. That's the one where AI becomes as smart as humans, maybe even smarter, right? Kind of like the ultimate science fiction scenario.
right? AGI is kind of like the holy grail of AI research. It's the point where machines can learn and adapt and solve problems just as well as humans, maybe even better.
Okay, wow. That's really next level stuff. But honestly, it's a little frightening too. What happens when we create machines that might be smarter than us?
Well, that's the big question, right? And it's one that philosophers and scientists have been, thinking about for a long, long time. How do we make sure that a super intelligent AI shares our values? How do we avoid unintended consequences? How do we even control something that's smarter than we are?
Those are some really big questions, and they make me a bit nervous, to be honest. It's like we're about to create something that could completely change what it means to be human.
That's certainly a possibility, and we need to take it seriously. But it's important to remember that the future isn't set in stone. We have the power to shape how AI develops and how it becomes a part of our lives.
So what can we do? How do we make sure that AI, even super intelligent AI, stays a force for good?
That's the challenge and the opportunity in front of us. I think it starts with understanding that AI ethics isn't just a technical issue. It's a human issue. It's about who we are, what we believe in, and what kind of future we want to build.
That's a powerful way to put it. So it's not just about the code itself, it's about the values that we build into that code.
Exactly. We need to be humble when we're developing AI.
Hmm.
Recognizing that we don't have all the answers. We need to be willing to have those tough conversations, to wrestle with those complex ethical problems, and to change course when we need to.
That sounds like a call to action, not just for the scientists and engineers, but for all of us.
It is. It is a call to action. The future of AI isn't something that's just going to happen to us. It's
Yeah.
something we're going to create together.
Yeah.
And it's up to all of us to make sure we create a future where AI makes our lives better, empowers us, and helps us build a better world.
Well said. This has been a truly fascinating and honestly sometimes a little scary deep dive into AI ethics. For those of you listening, I hope this exploration has been as thought-provoking for you as it's been for me. This is just the beginning of the conversation, and I encourage you to keep exploring these issues, to ask questions and to get involved in the ongoing debate about the future of AI.
Remember, the future isn't predetermined. It's up to all of us to shape it in a way that benefits humanity and stays true to our values.
Wise words. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.